Welcome back to Redefine Parenting with your host, Veenu Keller. We want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Redefine Parenting is a revolutionary approach to nurturing our children. Veenu will bring you live experts, transformative insights, and a fresh perspective, all aimed at helping families worldwide truly understand their children. Together, let's give them a childhood they won't have to heal from. Hello, everyone. I am so excited about today because I have this fabulous person as my guest today. She is a dear friend of mine. I've had the privilege of mentoring her, coaching her, and now we have created this beautiful friendship. And here's what's great about her. She also has a TV show that she could tell you more about, but it's about living your victorious life because that's what she's exactly about. And when you meet and get to hear what Cindy has to say, you'll understand why she is the victorious person, because she brings this sense of energy and smile to everyone's lives that she touches. So without further ado, let me please welcome Cindy Gould to our show. Thank you, Cindy, for being here.
Oh my goodness. Thanks for having me. And thanks for that beautiful introduction. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. So with Cindy and I, we were like tossing back and forth, like, what are we going to talk about? And so here's one thing that Cindy and I have in common. We have adult children. And, Cindy and I had this conversation like probably a year ago where, I told her, I said, I wasn't ready to have twins again. And I was really looking forward to my kids just being out of the house, and they really didn't need me, right? Like I have a past story where I spent many years suicidal and I was waiting for my kids to grow up. And thank God I found Tony Robbins, which literally shifted my whole life, my whole mindset, my beliefs. But I did have this belief that they didn't need me anymore once they turned 18. And boy, was I wrong. And thank God I learned this lesson in 2007 when my kids were still young. And I realized that, and many of you as my listeners know that I say this is my boot camp, right? From birth to 18 is our boot camp where we get to just fill our kids with everything we need them to know, our beliefs, our values, and really help shift them and catapult them into the future. Little did I know that they were going to need me more now as adults than they did then. And that's why Cindy and I said, no matter how old you are, you're still my baby.
Yep. Yep. No matter what. And no matter how, it's funny because I just had dinner. In fact, you know that because we were chatting before I went to dinner Sunday with my son, Nicholas, and his sweetheart, Casey, and my daughter, Olivia. And I just looked at these they're my babies. You know what I mean? And that's why I think that even came into my spirit because I hear about all their grown-up things and all the things they do, right? But they're still my babies, and I still want them to be safe. And you know what I mean? You still have that tug in your heart. Hug goodbye, because I know your family, you hug and kiss like we do. And when you give them a hug goodbye, even if you just saw them the day before, it's just like, oh, right? It's so cool.
It is. And, and it's great because I literally just got a text when we were talking, and Cindy, that my daughter-in-law is actually in the hospital having a baby today, and she's in labor. And my son just texted me. He's like, she's 8 centimeters. So anytime I'm going to have my second grandchild, which is a boy. So I'm really excited about that. And again, here's what's beautiful is like all day long, I've been texting my son back and forth, respecting the privacy that they just wanted them to in the room, or I would have been there. And just really being able to support him and know that I love him. I'm thinking about him and, going over my head like the day that he was born. Right. Yeah. And now he's having his baby and remembering how it felt to have his brother even and him being the oldest, just like my granddaughter, who very well, Cindy, that it's going to be a different stage for him, right? So it's not the first time you're having a baby, it's the second one. And the thoughts that we have, and I know you have other children too, it's like that thought was, can I love this one as much as I love the first one? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
And yet you still have that moment, right? You still have that moment of thinking, I hope I will do this child justice. I hope this child knows how much I love them, just like I did the first one. And then I hope the first one's not jealous and feeling like they're loved less, right?
Right. Right. Totally. I mean, it's so funny as I was thinking over some different things today while I was thinking into us getting together and chatting. I was just thinking about the many things. And that was one of the things that came up is like, I remember the actual birth of each of my children, and even the feelings I was having, and even that feeling, because Olivia was the oldest and she's a girl. So that's one, and then my second was a boy. So the jealousy thing would be a little bit different. But then when I had another boy, and just even the thinking, and there wasn't really the jealousy thing there, thank goodness, but it was just the thoughts of, even hearing them when they were older teasing, well, I'm her favorite. Well, I'm her favorite. And we don't have favorites, right? And I heard your boys doing that when we were together, in the summer. And I just started to giggle because it's interesting. And I think they partially mean it, like, right?
They do, yes. And I think it's funny because, like, when people look at my phone, it says, my kid's name, and it's my favorite son, Connor. But then if you look, and they're like, "Oh, your favorite son, Connor." But then I'm like, "So look at Cameron's name," and then it's like, my favorite son, Cameron. And then I'm like, "Okay, now look at Samuel's name, and my favorite son, Samuel." And then look at my daughter's name, my favorite daughter, Sage. So it's so funny. And I had that for Stella, but then she changed hers. So we have this little, playful thing with us. But the point is, to your point, to us mamas, there's no favorites. But if they want to play that game, I mean, it's funny because I listen to my husband do that with his sister Jenna all the time. I mean, Jenna will like, "Well, I'm mom's favorite." And Brian will just start laughing and be like, "Yeah, okay." And then Marissa chimes in. So I feel like with all adult kids, when you have that bond with that sibling and everything is just fun and amazing, you guys can have that little fun back and forth and that little poke. And to your point, I'm wondering if in their brain, they kind of think that, because here's the truth. I don't love my children any differently. Like, my love is unconditional for all my children, yet my bond is different with each of my children.
Yes. Yes. And even your interactions as adults, and the times you text, the times you may talk are different with each child. That doesn't mean you love them any less, or because you have that unconditional love. Absolutely to your point, though, very different. Even the conversations, right, are different, and they're different. And the things that they come to you for, or the times where you feel like you can interject with one child where with another child you wouldn't, right?
Yes. It's like, what toes you're going to step on at what time. And who has what attitude and who has what tonality. When you hear that tonality, you're like, "Yep, I crossed that line. Let me dial that back in." Or do I need to pull the mom card going, "Well, I'm still mom. Like, I'm still mom. And I know you don't want to hear that. And yet I'm still mom. So, we'll just change the subject."
We're totally disagree.
Sometimes that gets me out of it. But I mean, but let's go back to like this, is that how much our adult kids need us, like the challenges they go through with their own children, this moment when they're having another baby, I know that you unfortunately lost your son a couple of years ago, and having to help the siblings, not only you grieve through this, but the siblings grieve through this. Right. And how much they needed you at that same time.
Right. It was a different grieving for siblings than for a mom or for grandchildren. At the time, I was so grateful that my mom flew in the same day. And, when I was rushing back into town as well, and she got us a hotel room so that I could fall apart, basically, and not do it, in front of our whole family, which I did anyway, except it gave me an openness to be able to help them, when we were together, as opposed to just, the way that a mama would fall apart. And it's been different. Both of Olivia, and Jessica as well, and Nicholas, they've all grieved in different ways. And, because Nicholas and Mana were the brothers, right? And brothers have a different bond, and brothers play video games together, and brothers do this, and the sisters dance with the brothers, and all those different things. And the things that they miss are very different, and the times they grieve are different. Like, one thing I've noticed is if I see some, get a notification at the morning and I just happen to be up, and it's always going to, I'm not always, Thank you for that. It's often going to be, see, I got it right, girl.
You did. You did.
Yeah, repetition. But it's often going to be, one of my children. I see them and I know what's going on, right? Especially that hour.
Right.
And so but let me share something with you that I was so grateful for. About 8 or 9 months before Mana moved back home to heaven. And of course, we didn't know that any of that was happening. He got sick, and 2 weeks later, he was gone. So it was one of, so unexpected. I actually, in my spirit, had this unction to go meet with each of my adult children privately, just me, and to just tell them, hey, you know what? I had you when I was younger. I made some choices that hurt you. I made choices that weren't the choices I would make now. And I can even see some of those things reflecting in some of your choices, or
Mm,
in maybe some of the ways that you may feel about yourself or other things. So I'm asking you for my forgiveness. And
mm,
can we please, if there's anything that I can share with you from those things, let's chat. And what was so great for me was that I had that conversation even with Mana, and all three, I had it with the three children that live here first. And of course we're crying, and it was individual one-on-ones. And so it was different things for different child or different children. I'm so grateful though that I had that.
right.
Like, to your audience, I would invite you to, because we're different. Like, you had your children apart, right? And now I'm kind of redoing some of it with some grandchildren, right? And we're very different parents and grandparents at this point.
We are. And I love that you bring that up, because I mean, I've had conversations with my kids too, as I went through my own personal growth journey, right? 16 years ago, and figuring out that when we parent through our baggage,
Right.
it goes into our children, right? That's why we had like that generational gaps, and how, I, Cindy joined us at my seminar, which she was just making reference to this past week, a workshop we had called Thriving Together. And it was a 3-day workshop. And one of the things that we said is like, take out absolutes, because when you say always or never, forget what you're even talking about. People are just focused on proving that it wasn't never, it wasn't always. So that's what she was making reference about. But we also talked about, how do we communicate to our children when we don't feel so great, right? When we don't feel good about ourselves, our self-esteem is low, our self-worth is low. We are still understanding that there's unconditional love, but yet our love that we received was always conditional. And so we try to reflect that differently in our parenting. And when it doesn't show up that way, because you don't even know in that moment, like I was a young mom like you, Cindy. I was 20 when I had my first son, and I was 25 when I had my second son. And then fast forward 17 years later, I had some twins, right? So, and the biggest compliment I get, and my listeners have heard this before, is that I say, when the boys tell me I'm raising them so much differently, and I'm like, thank God I am, because I had to learn that I was worth it. I had to learn the unconditional love for myself. I had to learn that I was a good person, even though I made mistakes, and not beat myself up, but build myself up instead. And as I realized that, I am able to raise my younger children now in a different light, in a different way. And I'm hopefully teaching them that they are worth it, and that their love is unconditional, that no matter what mistakes they make, and you may feel punished or there may be consequences, but that doesn't take away how much I love you. And
Yes.
I want to teach you how to navigate through life. And there's going to be no's a lot. There's going to be, no, you can't do this right now. There's going to be, you know what? The explanation you want right now is going to take a lot longer than the time I have. So you're just going to have to take that I am mom right now. And in about an hour, I can explain why the answer is no, which they don't really like. But I heard that all the time when I was growing up, and I'm sure you did too, because our parents were probably in the same generation, right? Where it's like, it's no because I told you so. It's no because I'm mom. And there wasn't a lot of, well, let me explain to you why. Let me explain to you why. And so, it is telling our kids like, hey, all I can do is tell you that I was doing the best that I could with the resources I thought I had at that time, and
Yes.
that I want to do better. And I am sorry, and taking ownership, because what that's going to do is teach our kids that too. And to your point, your kids have kids. And
Mhm.
so it's so important that we can reconcile with our own adult children so they don't pass that on
Yes.
generationally.
Yes. And we give them permission when we do that to own their own mistakes or their own choices that were less than stellar with their children, right? We give them permission to forgive themselves and permission to go to their children and say, oops, I'm sorry, right? And I think that, like, I even think about so many different things that obviously that we would have done differently. But one of the things that you said this past weekend, you or Tammy, was our parents, and I've always believed this. I have amazing parents, and they come from a lot of tough stuff. And I've always said they did the very best they could do with what they had. The distinction that you made is with the resources they believed they had. And it boils down to belief. And it really does. And so when we instill in our children, hey, you know what? We recognize that we had a lot of growing to do, and now that I've grown even more so now, even as I did while they were babies and growing up, that the same opportunity is there for you to be able
Right.
to grow and to do those things. And it's great. By the way, we have one of our good friends, Dominica, on here with her twins. She's a
Uh,
twin to two adults, two adult girls. And thank you for being here, both of you. I don't know who the other one is, but someone
so,
else joining us.
I feel like also allowing our adult kids to know that they were part of our growth, and
Yes.
that they still are, is that,
Mm.
you know, we used to say there's no book on parentings, but there's a lot of book on parentings, and you have to see what's right in with
Yeah.
what it fits for you. And I think that you can agree with me, Cindy, because we've had this discussion before, is that, there's a lot of parenting styles, right? Helicopter parenting, bulldozer parenting, mindful parenting, conscious parenting. There's so many labels about what parenting looks like and the
Mhm.
philosophy in it. And one of the things that I say is that be the parent your child needs you to be in that moment.
Mm. Yeah.
If they need you to hover a little bit more because they're having some challenges, or they're having some insecurities, or they're having some doubt, and they need you just to be a little bit more of influence in their life or presence in their life, then be it. If they need to feel their feels in that moment
Mhm.
without being judged or scrutinized for it, then be that mindful parent to allow them to feel what they need to feel in that moment, right? So it's really, and that has worked for me more so now, because I didn't understand it then. I really was focused on, okay, am I a good parent? If I'm this parent, then I'm a good parent. If I'm a conscious parent, then I'm a good parent. Instead of just recognizing that I was a good parent just for showing up,
Yeah.
and that there's always ways I could do better. And that's what this show's about, is like, if we could redefine the way we're parenting, could we do better if we knew better?
Yes. Yes. And even now with our adult children,
Right.
right? Like, and even being present and showing up for our adult children, I think is a big deal, and being connected enough to them to recognize, because you're a very intuitive mother as well. And because I've seen that, I've seen that with you, but you're connected enough and you know your children so well, but frequency wise, energetically, spiritually, you're so connected that you would know if something was up with one of your grown children, and they might just need a text from mom or a phone call, or hey, I'm by your house, let's go grab some yogurt or ice cream or something. They may just need a hug from mom, or just need to throw up all over you, because they had a lousy day, and you're just going to know the right words to say or the right things
Right.
to do,
And
that will help them.
that's why I always say that, I feel like, especially now, with what I see with families, is that parents want to be their kids' friend. They don't want their
Mhm.
kids to hate them. They don't want their kids not to like them. They want to be the cool parent and here's what I have to say about that. And I've said it many times before, is that our kids don't need another friend. They're going to go find one. What they need is you to be a parent, because they're never, ever, ever going to have a mom like you. They're never going to have a dad like you. And I like one of the things that I believe it's Byron Katie, but I heard it from Tony Robbins, and it's blame effectively. It's blame, and I could have it totally wrong, but I did hear it from Tony Robbins. And it really is, if you're going to blame me as your mom for all the things that I did wrong, blame me for who you are now for the things that I did as well. Right. And I think it's important that we realize that we are doing the best that we can with the resources we think we have.
Yeah.
And I think that is a huge thing that we say, because maybe there are more resources out there we just haven't tapped into yet, but we're
Right.
doing what we can with what we think we have in that moment.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's why you have your show and I have my show, is to help the world realize that there's even more resources out there, and that we can be, a force for good when we all come together and teach our kids the things that we weren't able to learn at our time. We didn't have where we can video chat like this. The only time we saw that was on the Jetsons, right?
Right.
And we didn't have computers in the palm of our hands now that we call telephones. Like, we were connected by cords and you couldn't really go anywhere. And then we had the portable phones, but then if you went 2 feet off your property, it died, right? So, that's the generation that, we're growing up in, and now it's different. And we have to protect we feel we need to be more protective because there's more opportunities to reach our children. So we feel like this sense of more protection over them.
Right.
Which our kids interpret as, we don't trust them. You don't get me. You don't know me. Instead of them realizing that, no, I do. And that's why I feel I need to protect you even more.
Right. Right. And you also know the world.
Right.
No matter how old they get. It's interesting because, so my son Nicholas, when I had that conversation with him and, said, please forgive me, the thing that he's so cool. Like, what he said to me was, because I was in tears and, I addressed specific things. You know me, I'm pretty specific about stuff. And and wanted specific things to be acknowledged. And he said, you know what, Mom? He said, but I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be who I am had you not even made some of those painful choices, or choices that cause those things. And I thought, yeah, but the grace that, and so now having that conversation opened the door for conversations to continue to happen if something comes up, or, without it being a big fat argument, or anything like that, which is different. And like you said, if we had Google University when we were young moms, holy smack, right? we would have been, what do I say back to that? Because there's no real excuses anymore. I mean, you can pretty much find anything you want to online and be able to bring that, even if you don't know how to cook. Like, let's suppose you don't know how to, even cook or do things or make a home or do crafts. You have a child that goes to a friend's house and they always do crafts, and you want to be able to provide that so her friends come to your home. Then
Right.
Learn how to do some crafts and Google, right?
Google. I say that all the time. My client says, well, I don't know about this. I'm like, well, let's ask Dr. Google. Let's just throw it out there, and it's also fact checking too. And, it's making sure that our kids are getting the right information. And that's why I think our kids need us even more now as adults, right? It's learning. Now I've equipped you with the tools of life, and now you're in life and you're doing life. Now there's going to be more things coming up, as, like my son becoming a parent and, having to make job choices. Like, is this the job I really want to keep, or do I need to move on? Or, is it a good time to move in with my girlfriend? Or, what is that going to look like, at my age? There's lots of different questions that come about now, in this moment, because life is happening.
Right.
And people say it's life happening for us. It is, but it's also happening through us.
That's exactly because of us. Exactly. Right. 100%. One of the things that you said this weekend, and it's something that I'm hugely believe, is that we need to create safety with our children so that we're a safe place, so that no matter what's going on, they'll come to you and they'll feel safe to be able to do that. Right. Even if they know our personalities, they know the things that might trigger us and we might, have to bite our tongues off sometimes, or, they know that. Right. But just the fact that they feel safe enough, and it matters, especially even, and in addition to when they're older, because that's when relationships are going on. That's when work choices are happening, or there might be some negative things going on at work or other things. And we need to be able to provide them with that. Hey, this is still your home. I'm still your mom and I'm still in your corner, and let's
Right.
talk it out,
Right.
right?
And that brings us like when there's conflict, right? I mean, I think that when the kids are young and there's conflict with them, okay, they're going to get over it. They're going to wake up in the morning and be like, hey, can you make me breakfast? But when they're
Right.
adults, and there's conflict, like I've been in conflict with my adult sons on several occasions, they get to that point where I'm an adult. I don't agree with what you're saying. And because they're my children, the apple did not fall far from the tree. So they're just probably as stubborn as I am in that moment. And, we're both trying to have the most certainty to win the conversation. And then
Mhm.
stuff happens where it's, we're not talking for a little bit,
Mhm.
and I could tell you my heart hurts in those moments.
Yeah.
And I start to figure out, like, what do I need to do better to create that resolution with the conflict that we're having? And it goes back to what we said, and what Tammy and I were teaching this weekend is creating
Yeah.
that open, safe, and trusting space of communication. And I'm going to tell you, it's different. It's
Yeah.
different when they're adults than it is with kids. But if there's a foundation there that's built when there are kids, it's easy to reconcile when you become adults, because that's one thing that I could always tell my son. I'm like, I've never lied to you, and I'm not going to start now. Can you
Right.
appreciate this is how I'm seeing it? And even though I'm not seeing it from your point of view and you're not seeing it from mine, but could you appreciate for a moment where my perception is coming from?
Mhm.
Because I can see where you're coming from. And if we can just appreciate where each of us are and stop wronging each other for what we saw or what we heard or how we interpret it, because our mind our mind deletes, distorts, and generalizes the information it wants because of the filters that we've created from the beliefs that we've had. And I
Yeah.
think as moms, we have this feeling that, well, of course they believe what I believe because, hello, I raised them, right?
Right.
And yet not. And yet
Mhm.
not, because life experiences happen and
Right.
their thoughts change, their experience change, their certainty changes because they have a
Mhm.
different belief, a different influence,
Right.
you know. And so there comes that conflict. And I know that it has been so healthy for me and my boys to have these conversations. I was sharing some conflict with my stepdaughter who's an adult now, and what's great is that we're able to start to figure out and come together and resolve that. And it's just knowing that, especially as a parent, what our kids can't see it in us, Cindy, is the unconditional love that we have for them. So let
Yeah.
them be mad, let them vent, let them try to hurt us because they're hurting and that's all that they know.
Right.
But then come with open arms and say, okay, when you're ready to talk, I'm going to be here. Because no matter what you've said, no matter how much you have hurt me, because I'm sure your kids have hurt you many times,
Oh, yeah.
right? I
What
love you.
yeah.
And that's all I can say is I love you. So when you're ready, not when I'm ready, but when you're ready.
That's so good. Not when I'm ready, but when you're ready. That's powerful. And yeah, of course, just it's kind of like I remember when the kids were little and I said, there are going to be days where you probably are going to slam the door and say, I hate you under your breath, or, I'm mad, or, you may, or whatever. You may not like my choices. No, I always love you. And I know you always love me, no
Right.
matter what, no matter how angry you are. And that's a safety line. That's like a baseline. And there have been, of course, there have been times, right? And and when your children don't all live in close proximity to you, because I have a daughter in Hawaii, and it's like, okay, and even having connection and keeping all of the things connected. And then, and of course, Mana's, widow, wife, Holly, as you know, and his 5 babies, and at least they live close to me and I have great connection. But even building and doing the family dynamic after that event experience and gathering, as because we've talked a bunch about it, and trying to coordinate with everybody's schedules and doing holidays and birthdays and things is different. One of the things though that was super cool. So we, like I shared with you, we went out to dinner the other night, and it was the hibachi, where they do the whole haya stuff at the table, right? And so, and all of us have long hair. The girls like Casey and Olivia and I are there, and we're like sitting back and our hair's getting hot. And there's a cute couple next to us. They're super young, like younger than my kids. And it was his birthday and his girlfriend was taking them out. And there was an issue with her credit card, and we could overhear what was going on, and we're like, gosh, it's the birthday. Here's what was so cool. My babies and Casey, Nick's love, all of them were trying to sneakily, how do we pay for that? How can we cover for them? And I was like, oh, and inside I'm going, yes, yeah, thinking, oh my goodness. And it almost moved me to tears watching them try to help her not be embarrassed in a private way, and be able to take care of that. And I thought, and so, as much as sometimes like you and I, because we had the when we were younger and we had trauma in our lives, et cetera, we still did some cool things that were great, right? And we see it in our babies as they get older.
Planting those seeds. I call it planting the seeds, but again, as much as we've done, and I don't even say wrong, as much as we made different decisions, then hindsight's 2020 is like we said, we still installed something in them. And again, going back to that open, safe, and trusting space is, did we create that foundation where our kids know no matter what, you can come to me, right? I know that I will be one of their first calls, if not the first call. Like, it's going to be me because I am their strength. They know that regardless of everything that we've been through in life, it was always mom, and it still is. No matter what, it's always mom. And because I was a single mom for many years, and as you were, and they learn that the one constant in their life has been their mom since day one.
Right. Well, you know what, Veenu, one of the things that I would say too with your children and with my children, they know that our goal is to set them up to win. No matter what, like whatever input we're going to give to them, there isn't like an agenda. The agenda is so that you can win in that,
right.
Or that, right, that you can grow through those things together, that if it's a relationship thing or if it's another thing, or that you're going to win, and that you continue to create, as I would say, a victorious life and a joy-filled life, and a life where you're contributing and you're living out your purpose and you're happy. That's right. Like, there's nothing more, right, as a parent than seeing your children filled with joy.
So much. I mean, you think about, why was Christmas so exciting every year? Because it was the pure joy on their face.
Right. And being able to sneak gifts in that they didn't know what they were getting, and pretending like they weren't going to get it. And then seeing their face the morning that you did get it for me, that kind of thing.
Right. Because all that time, like, don't think you know what you're getting, because you don't. Because if you do, I'm taking it back. And
exactly. Yes. Do you find even on holidays now, though, that it's more challenging as your children have gotten older?
Here's what I find most challenging is that how expensive they are now that they're older. It's like,
yes.
The older they get, the bigger the toys, the more they cost. But you know what? Here's also what I've noticed: how much gratitude my boys have. Like, the older they get, the more gratitude. Like, they realize what it takes to be able to do what we did, in those times. And, it's interesting because I tell my sons all the time is that, like, I'll do things for them, like, Mom, you don't have to do this. And I said, you know what? You're right. I don't, but I get to.
Yes.
There was an opportunity growing up that I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't in the same place in my life. I have an amazing husband now, and together we're able to give all 6 of our kids, a nice life. And it's because we get to, it's not because we have to. And that was a huge distinction for our kids, is allowing us to, just receive with gratitude. But here's the lesson I got this year, Cindy, at Christmas, is that I also realized that my definition of how people show gratitude is not their definition. And that was literally the gift I got this Christmas. Is I would get frustrated. I'm like, you're not taking care of it. You just left it on the floor. You're not grateful. And then I realized, I'm like, wait a second. Just because I would show gratitude that way does not mean that they're not grateful. And who am I to sit here and judge them and say, you're not grateful, instead of appreciating and asking them, I can see you're grateful, or, what would gratitude look like for you now? I mean, when they're 4 and 5, it's like a big hug. Oh, thank you, thank you. And as they get older, it's like, wow, thank you, mom. Like, I know that this took thought in getting this. I really appreciate it. Like, it just shifts. And even
100%.
with us adults, we show gratitude in different ways.
100%. Like it was funny. I was just thinking as you were talking about our Christmas this year, and Olivia, she's still, I still see that little girl in her as she's opening gifts, and she just does this little, and she still does that. She gets all excited and claps and does whatever. And then she has a pause for a second, and she's so sincere when she says, gosh, mom, thank you. Thank you for that. Or she'll sneak me a hug while we're putting, the food on the table and just say, thank you so much. And I appreciate that, because I think as they've gotten older, they do recognize, as you, again, I keep reflecting back on this last weekend because the event was so fun and it was just great. But even when you guys were saying how, the word adulting, like we never heard that word when we were kids, right? What the heck is adulting, right? You just grow up and you have to do your thing.
Right.
And as they're doing that, and even now when, I'm sure you've seen your boys when they haven't had jobs or whatever, and now it's so different than us. We could go in a job place and sell ourselves, right? Now it's everything's online. And if they can't check off all the boxes, you don't even have a chance to prove that you'd be the perfect candidate for that job. And things are so different now with adulting as it was for us. But I think our children appreciate, when they're paying their bills and they're having to take care of things. Wow, if I'm struggling and I don't have children, how the heck did mom do it? Or right.
Right. And there's always not like, they're always like waiting for that perfect time. I was just talking to someone today and I said, there's no perfect time. Like one of my clients, he's like, well, this needs to line up so I can go get a job. I'm like, you just got out of college. Like, what are you waiting for? I said, it's just like having kids. Like if we keep waiting for the perfect time to have kids, we're never going to have kids. Like the perfect time is the day that you find out you're pregnant. You're like, guess what? This must be the perfect time because the person above said, yes, it's going to be the perfect time. So, but it's also being there for their disappointing times too. I mean, I think that our kids, as they get older, they feel pain differently than they did when they were kids. Like there's a lot more emotions, there's a lot more responsibility. And so it's coming in and saying, I got you.
Yeah.
And I like what one of the people that commented saying creating safety and trust was the best thing I did as a dad. So kudos to you, to our listener who said that, because that is so true. And I say this, what are the values that you want to install in your children now? So when they're an adult, they continue and it continues to foster and create that in your grandchildren. Is it love unconditionally? What does that look like? Is it respect? Is it trust? How do you create trust? If you didn't have trust with your family, what could your parents have done differently that you now can take on and do differently in your children?
Yep.
What does openness look like?
Yeah. What does joy look like? What does safety look like? What does confidence look like? And what is, encouragement look like? Because, when our children were younger and we were doing the single thing, we had to work, right? And so they didn't get to have the same things that I did. And your childhood was a little bit different than mine, where your mother was working her tail off too. And I got to come home to homemade bread. My mom even ground the wheat. I mean, and all that good stuff, yummy stuff. I appreciated that. And I remember thinking I wasn't able to create that during certain seasons of my children's lives because I was doing that and I had to pivot, right, as we do. And I can see where that would affected, even though I did the best I could with what I believed I had to work with. And it was great. There were great things. And then there were things that weren't so great, and it's just, again, giving, I think, grace. What does grace look like? The things that, again, well, I'm just going to say it because I just love this last weekend. But one of the things that you both said too is that, our children, a lot of times we just expect children, I think, maybe from the era that we grew up in, for them to just suck it up. They know mom's working hard. You just got to deal with it, instead of realizing that, maybe somebody was mean to them at school that day. Maybe and they're having a meltdown, maybe because they didn't even drink any water the whole day and they just ate a bunch of fruit roll-ups, or squishy, whatever those gummy fruit things are, sugar, basically,
Right.
and instead of just like actually stopping a minute right? Because I see that even now, you know, in my older children, watching them navigate with their children, you know, it's like, and I appreciate, like my daughter Olivia or Jessica does the same thing, and they just pause, or Holly does that, you know, if they pause a minute and kind of, what was their day like, you know,
Right.
before they launch off, right?
Right. And I could appreciate like one of the things I see in my mom now that she's retired, she's a lawyer and stuff, is that how much she bakes that yummy bread now. And I'm like, Mom, you know how to bake bread? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, huh. I had to wait till I was like 40 something years old to taste it, but it's amazing. Um, you know, but it's also, to your point, I realize watching my mom work two
Mhm.
jobs, put herself through law school,
Mhm.
that she didn't have to teach me that's what a belief is, to work hard to, make life work. It's like I saw that in her. I saw the patterns my mom had.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm determined. My husband sent me something about ADHD, about how the mind, like, you can know what you need to do, but there's something in the back of the mind that doesn't push you to do it. Right. So it's part of the ADHD. And I said, well, that's so interesting because I have ADHD, but I've always been pushed to get things done. Like, there's
Mhm.
always been a pull in my life that I don't want things hanging over my head. I'd rather get it done than procrastinate. I said, but you know what's so crazy is I can see this in my kids that have ADHD. I can
Yes.
see they know what to do. It's not a fact that they don't know what to do. It's There's not a timeline. There's no urgency to get it done. And I had no idea that that was part of that, the ADHD. And I'm actually going to have some guests on my show that are going to be talking about this. But
Too fun.
the point I have is that, you know, I have resilience. I
Mhm.
have determination. I
Yeah.
have courage and bravery to face and do the things that are in uncharted waters, to see what I get with it.
Yeah.
And I've been able to demonstrate that to my children too.
Yeah.
And without saying you need to do this, it's looking at what do you want in your life and how are you going to get it? What's the formula you saw?
Mhm.
Because success leaves clues. So what are the clues that I left behind to teach you to be successful in your life, whatever that looks like? And you have to determine what success is. And the other thing is, what are the rules you're putting around it? The harder the
Yeah.
rules are, the harder it is going to be for you to accomplish it. So
100%.
change the rules to be successful in that.
And setting yourself up to win, setting them up to win, setting your family up to win. And even as our, to the topic today, even like I think about now, like my father, right after Mana passed away, as my father did too, unexpected. And I think about, my dad was the coolest. Like he was so cool, and that he would call me every single day for almost 30 solid years.
Wow.
And yeah, and he was so consistent with that. And I think about where I got my work ethic from, because I saw my father. That was back in the day when parents worked. You're, 15, 16. They took on the overtime shift. They did those things, right? And then I saw my mom create such a beautiful home. And then
Mm.
as soon as her seventh child graduated from high school, she went to the university, ended up being the valedictorian. She was a, dean of psychology, had her own, private practice, all this stuff. I saw her do all of that. And I'm like, holy smack, mom, because it was almost the opposite of yours. Now your mom's making the bread, and now my mom's in her 80s and she's back to doing all the foodie stuff. But, and it's kind of funny because I don't think she ever really stopped that while she was doing that. But she, had that successful part of her season in her life after we were all, through and with school and everything. And it was just, it's interesting because as our children are older, I've seen the efforts that my parents made to keep the continuity and the connection in our life. I got to witness that with you, with your family, in the summer. And I've done the same thing with my children. And what are some of the things you guys have, like consistent kind of rituals you guys do, or ways that what are kind of things that you guys do?
So, some of the things that I still do that I got from my mom is that, you know, um, like I never grew up cuddling, but like on the weekends, because my mom was so busy, like I would lay in bed with my mom and I would cuddle and watch TV. And even today, like, my daughter, like Sage, was not feeling well, so she stayed home from school. And I said, "Do you want to just put a movie on?" I had 3 clients that ironically canceled. So obviously the universe knew my daughter needed me to have some time. And so we just put a movie on in the living room, and, we just watched series together. And it's like, you talk about that. And I'm like, wow, like that's what my mom used to do. If I was sick on a weekend and she was able to be home, we would just lay in bed and watch TV. We weren't laying in bed, but just that time watching shows together and laughing together and talking about them together, and, um, on weekends, we always go to my grandma's house for, like lunch or whatever. And I still feel like when I'm able to, like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to have my kids over on the weekends for breakfast or for lunch. I love cooking for my kids. If my son, that I do have a son, fortunately, that lives 10 minutes away. He's like, "Mom, can we come over for dinner?" And I'm like, I mean, sure, let me wrap something up, get it in the oven real quick or whatever. But I love that. I love
Mhm.
that they know that they can come home. And just like I feel that with my mom, like I thoroughly enjoy going to my mom's, because number one, I get to see you because you live right by her. But
Yeah.
it's just home. It's my mom's cooking. And I think that there's a sense of that, like when you eat mom's cooking, how it just brings you, it's almost like safety.
It is. It's safety and security. And it's kind of like while you were saying that, I can see your boys walking in the house and I love when even my grands, they all know because I've got older grandchildren and the youngest she's 3. But what's so cool for me is when they walk into the house and I'm like right by my kitchen. So I'm looking over there right now and they know right where their favorite goodies are. They just go straight, Nicholas will go straight to the fridge. Olivia will go hit the caramel and the chocolate. And a lot of times, because I live by myself, I have to like stock stuff up, right? But for that very reason, because I know where to go. Like if we're with my mom for Thanksgiving, we all fight over the skin while somebody's carving the turkey, right? I mean, there's just that stuff that you do, or you taste the gravy and instantly it gives you that hug, right? That safety hug with your parents. So
Mhm. I love it. I love it. But I think it's a great idea too, is like to think about what are the traditions that we're creating in our children's life that they get to continue with our grandkids, right? And then we get to be like, "Oh, I remember when your dad was little or when your mom was little, we used to do this too." And that's how traditions carry on and stuff, but that's also how values carry on.
yes,
Values also carry on the same way we introduce traditions.
yes.
What's important to your house. And like one of the things that Tammy and I discussed this past weekend, since we made so many references to them, might as well make another one, is the theme of your home. Like, what's the theme?
Yes.
I mean, I will tell you, even though there wasn't a theme in the home per se, when I was growing up, I could tell you that it's respect. Like, respect was it. Like, respect was number one in our house.
Mm-hmm.
And I too have put that forward with my kids, probably not the same way my mom did, but in other areas. And now that I always say, like, my twins are my redo, right? My do over, we do have a theme and it's called loving kindness,
Yes,
you
it
know?
is.
So when things aren't
Mhm.
happening and there's disconnect, even with me and my husband, it's like, is this loving kindness? And if it's not, it gives us an opportunity to check ourselves. My older sons used to say, "You got to check yourself before you wreck yourself." And I'm like, that is so true. That is so true too. Right. So, this has just been so, so great with you, Cindy. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your
Thank you.
heart about our babies that are adults. And if we wanted to leave our audience with just, a couple golden nuggets, what would you want them to know?
I think to be really intentional every day to make sure that your babies, no matter how old they get, they know how much you love them. I think that's the biggest thing. And to really, what do you have to do to make that happen? If you don't feel connected to them, connect,
Yes,
connect.
100%.
Mhm.
100%. And we all connect different ways.
Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
invite everyone, Google the love languages,
Oh, yeah.
know what and because you could take the test, your kids can take the test. Know what your kids' love language is. Don't assume that if yours is quality time, theirs quality time. Now,
Right.
presence and quality time is very important, but that does not mean that's how they receive the love from you. One of the things that I do is I ask my kids, "How do you know I love you? And what can I do to show you my love even more?"
Mm-hmm.
Because
That's
I
good.
want to know it's not about me giving, it's about them receiving,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
So good.
So, so good. Thank you again, Cindy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
For all you out there, please download my free book. There's the QR code on. It's definitely how to help your kids with self-esteem and
Yes.
really love them. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Redefine Parenting with Veenu Keller. Follow her on Instagram at Veenu Inspires. To learn more about Veenu, as well as download her free ebook now, go to www.veenuinspires.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it.